The video feed is already steady when the truck appears. White armor. Fresh panels. High roofline. A rare silhouette on a road near Pisky. And on the Ukrainian side of the screen, nobody sounds surprised. That is the first important detail. Because if the open-source reconstruction is broadly right, this vehicle had traveled more than 5,000 kilometers from Russia's Transbaikal region to reach the Donetsk front. One of Russia's newer and rarer KAMAZ 4385 armored trucks, a vehicle advertised as protected transport for troops and cargo in hostile zones, had been rushed across a continent to survive the last few kilometers. It didn't. A cheap FPV drone found it. Closed the distance. And turned that entire journey into smoke in seconds. But the real story is not that a $500 drone beat an armored truck. The real story is that by the time the drone dove, the truck had already lost. Because this was not just a clash of metal and explosives. It was a humiliation in the information layer first. And that is what makes this incident bigger than one burning vehicle on one road. Russia did not send this truck to the front because the battlefield was safe. It sent it because the battlefield was not. Losses had already forced Russian logistics into a grim adaptation cycle: add armor, add cages, add jammers, add improvised protection, keep moving. When ordinary trucks become coffins, protected mobility becomes precious. And when a newer protected vehicle is pulled from deep inside Russia and sent west, that says something cold about strain. It says the front is consuming transport faster than rear area inventories can comfortably replace it. The KAMAZ 4385 mattered for another reason. It represented a familiar military instinct: if the road is dangerous, thicken the shell. Build a vehicle that can shrug off fragments, small arms fire, blast. Put men inside. Push through. In older wars, that logic was sound. In Ukraine, it is increasingly incomplete. Because modern danger is no longer coming only from the side of the road or the front of a convoy. It is hanging overhead, waiting for a signal break, a pause, a hesitation, a shape. And above all, it is watching. That word matters more than armor. Watching. By 2024 and 2025, cheap FPV drones had already become one of the most efficient killers on the battlefield. They were crude by aerospace standards, often costing only a few $100s, but they gave units something artillery could not always provide on demand: immediate, steerable, visual violence. A drone operator could chase a truck into a tree line, dip under camouflage, come through a side angle, even enter openings that conventional fire could never exploit. And even when these drones failed in large numbers, which many did, the economics were still vicious. If enough cheap systems get a clean run at the target, the defender is still trading down. That is the arithmetic. But arithmetic alone does not explain why a rare armored truck can travel across Eurasia and then die almost casually near the front. For that, you have to look at the invisible contest around it. Russian crews have not been ignorant of the drone threat. Far from it. Across the war, they have layered vehicles with cages, improvised screens, electronic warfare kits, armored cabins, whatever might break the kill chain. The goal is not perfection. The goal is friction. Distort the drone's feed. Spoil the control link. Force the operator to miss. Make the last few seconds unstable enough for the truck to survive. So if a protected truck still gets found and finished, the question is not just, how powerful was the warhead? The question is, who owned the local information environment? Near Pisky, the answer appears brutal. The Ukrainian side was not simply flying a toy at a road. It was shaping a local sensing architecture. Somewhere above or behind the line, an observer drone is likely feeding a broad picture. Somewhere else, pie. Lots are waiting for the right tasking. The battlefield is now a layered hunt: one system finds, another confirms, another strikes. Sometimes the same crew does multiple parts. Sometimes different teams handle the relay. Either way, the important point is this: the vehicle is rarely dying because it was unlucky enough to be seen for 1 second. It is dying because it entered a zone where movement itself had become visible. That is a different kind of battlefield. And it changes how humiliation works. In older mechanized warfare, a destroyed armored truck could still be explained away as bad luck. Wrong road. Bad escort. Poor spacing. An ambush nobody could predict. But when a truck is tracked, isolated, struck, and then even the response to that strike is absorbed into the same kill chain, the embarrassment cuts deeper. That is not bad luck. That is systems failure. You can almost feel the false confidence inside the vehicle as it moves forward. Thick windshield. Protected body. A sense that this machine is not just another soft-skinned logistics truck waiting to be shredded. It was unveiled recently enough to carry some symbolic weight. It had come from far enough away to feel valuable. The crew inside likely understood that, too. Protected transport changes how men sit, how they scan, how much fear they admit. Then the signal picture begins to close around them. Not dramatically. Quietly. A road segment watched from above. A timing pattern understood. A direction of travel fixed. A likely halt point identified. A strike option held back until the geometry improves. That is the part most people never see in the final clip. They see the hit. They miss the ownership. And ownership is the real weapon here. Because the side that controls the picture controls the tempo. It decides whether to attack immediately or wait. Whether to hit the lead vehicle or the second. Whether to force a halt or let the target drift into a worse position. Whether to turn a single vehicle into a rescue trap. That last part may be the most revealing. In the reported sequence, another vehicle appears after the first strike, a fuel truck trying to assist, or at least approaching the stranded crew. On paper, that is support. On a drone battlefield, it can become aggregation. More men. More thermal signatures. More confusion. More targets compressed into one area by the false assumption that the first contact was the whole problem. But the first contact was never the whole problem. The problem was that the entire scene was still under hostile observation. That is the midpoint most armies still struggle to absorb. The threat is not the drone you notice. The threat is the system that keeps seeing after you think the event is over. And once that clicks, the story changes completely. This is no longer about a rare truck losing a duel with a cheap munition. It is about Russia sending protected mobility into a battlespace where protection from fragments and bullets is no longer the decisive variable. The decisive variable is whether your movement can remain untracked long enough to matter. If it cannot, then armor becomes a delay mechanism, not a guarantee. A shell, not a solution. That is why this kind of encounter fits a larger pattern now visible across the war. Front lines are not just trenches and strongpoints anymore. They are sensor webs. Some are crude. Some are improvised. Some fail constantly. But enough of them work often enough that roads once considered routine now behave like exposed channels inside an enemy operating system. A truck entering that channel is not merely driving. It is transmitting. Its shape transmits. Its route transmits. Its speed transmits. Its halt transmits. Its recovery attempt transmits. And once it transmits to a force that can fuse vision, piloting, and timing faster than you can adapt, the final explosion is just the receipt. That is what makes the phrase, "a $500 drone destroyed it," both true and misleading. True, because the strike system itself may be astonishingly cheap. Misleading, because the kill was not purchased for $500 alone. It depended on the much larger ecosystem around it: reconnaissance, communications, practiced crews, target discipline, sector familiarity, and the confidence to wait for a better shot rather than forcing a bad one. Cheap weapons become strategically terrifying when they are nested inside a mature sensing culture. And that is exactly what Russia ran into here. Not magic. Not invincibility. Not science fiction. Just a side that, in that moment, saw more clearly, decided faster, and exposed the other side's confidence as outdated. There is another hard truth inside this incident. Even successful drone warfare is messy. Many FPVs never reach the target. Jamming knocks them down. Weather ruins them. Pilot skill varies. Armored vehicles often survive glancing strikes. This is not a fantasy battlefield where every quadcopter becomes a perfect precision munition. Which makes moments like this even more telling. Because if even an imperfect, attritable, failure-prone drone ecosystem can make a newly fielded armored truck look obsolete in seconds, then the vulnerability is not accidental. It is structural. Russia can add more cages. More armor kits. More mobile jammers. More route discipline. It will adapt, because it has to. But every adaptation now enters the same brutal feedback loop. The other side watches, learns, reconfigures, and returns with a slightly better angle. That is the gray zone character of modern land war. The confrontation never begins at the moment of impact. It begins in signatures, emissions, camera lines, latency, pattern recognition, and the silent question of who is really blind. In this case, the answer seems merciless. Not the crew in the truck. Not the command that sent it. Not the support vehicle that came forward. They were moving inside someone else's picture. And once that happens, even a brand new armored truck can be reduced to a burning data point. Think about the message hidden in that 5,000-kilometer journey. Russia could still generate the vehicle. Still move it. Still commit it. But all of that industrial effort, rail capacity, fuel, maintenance, and operational need narrowed down to a few exposed seconds over one patch of road in Donetsk. That is the compression modern drone warfare imposes. Strategic depth shrinks into tactical vulnerability. Distance no longer guarantees safety. Newness no longer guarantees survivability. And prestige does not survive first contact with a kill chain it cannot see. That is why the humiliation here is larger than the blast. The truck was not simply destroyed. It was disproven. Disproven as a symbol of protected movement. Disproven as a confidence signal. Disproven as evidence that thick steel can solve what is now, fundamentally, an information problem. The battlefield did not care how far it had come. It only cared that it had been found. And that may be the coldest lesson of all. Modern deterrence is not just about who can hit harder. It is about who can reveal the other side first, track them longer, and make every kilometer of reinforcements feel like a guided delivery into hostile eyes. In that kind of war, the truck was finished long before the drone struck. The explosion was simply the moment everyone else was allowed to see it.